And I give the analogy when I teach people. It's like I used to be very much into athletics and sports. If you're at the plate and there's that 90-mile-per-hour fastball coming at you, and if you're overthinking it and you've lost your confidence that you can't hit this guy, you're going to strike out. So you have to be extremely confident in your giftings and all the tools that you have. Otherwise, this is a highly competitive field, extremely competitive field. And so if your giftings are there, then why fight it? Why try to be something else? And especially if you're starting out, it's really easy just to be overwhelmed and awed by somebody who's really good at their field, especially if they're very successful. It's like, wow, now I have to do that. Well, maybe if that's your leaning, but if it's not your leaning, you're in for a host of heartbreaks because it's just not your leaning.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold brush. My name is Laura Arango-Bear, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. On today's episode, we sat down with Frank Ordaz, a fine artist with a deep love of connecting with others through story and through his work. Frank shares with us his personal journey and his personal philosophy on being a complete human being in every aspect of life. He discusses the importance of confidence, believing in your giftings, and finding your own artistic voice. He also reflects on his experiences working as an illustrator at George Lucas's studio, Industrial Light and Magic, where he worked on such films as Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, E.T., and Indiana Jones. And he also tells us about the lessons he learned about excellence and continuous improvement. Frank emphasizes the value of community, personal connection, and creating art that is meaningful and appreciated by others. He also reflects that finding your tribe is easier today thanks to social media, so you may as well paint what you love. Finally, Frank tells us about all his upcoming shows and events at Broadmoor Galleries in Colorado Springs, another at the Hilbert Museum of California Art at Chapman University, American Narratives, and a few others. Welcome, Frank, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How about yourself, Laura?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat with you because you have a very fascinating history of how you got started and all of the things you've accomplished. And I really want to dive into that with you because I think it is so inspiring. But before we dive into all of the good stuff about your career and your fascinating life, do you mind telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
A little bit about who I am. Well, one, follower of Jesus, husband of 37 years, father of 2, grandfather of 2, and soon to be of 3. Love to paint. I love my family. I love my community here in Auburn, California. I love living in the United States. Who I am. Child of God. I mean, you're talking a philosophical question, because the more I think about it, who are you, in a relationship to my wife, provider, lover, to my sons, who am I, probably pain in the ass, but they know that I love them. I've done the best for them. To my grandchildren, he's a funny little guy on the internet because my grandchildren live in Hawaii, so all we can see is through there. And so as we spoke earlier, my whole idea is just to be a complete human being, not just art, but a parent, lover to my wife, a citizen of the community. I read a lot, part of a church. I do a Bible study here in my gallery, and I've met a lot of people in my community, so I'm very active, part of the Auburn Arts Commission in the past. And so I'm on board of directors of the California Art Club, and I love to teach when I have the opportunity to. I'm usually pretty busy, but yeah. How's that for openers?
Yeah, very philosophical opening. Yeah.
I read a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, no. If you want to continue, yeah.
No, it's like I do read art books. I definitely recommend Jacques Barzin. One of my influences was Jacques Barzin, who was a professor emeritus at Columbia. Wrote a book called The Use and Abuse of Art. And it was his lectures at the Smithsonian. And I've probably read that 3 or 4 times. And great insights. And he's quoting Nietzsche. And he goes, the German actually is the advantages or disadvantages of history. In other words, things kind of repeat itself, but really don't. They come in new forms. And so he goes, there are disadvantages of doing things the way they were done in the past to try to make them apply to today. So he's got all these great chapters of art as religion, art as therapy, art as science, art as redeemer, art as propaganda. Very very challenging, thought-provoking essays on the subject of art.
That sounds like a really good book. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah,
Because it sounds
you
very
can buy it for like
interesting.
$2 on Amazon. It's really been out of print for years.
Oh wow. Okay. Nice. Yeah. But continuing with talking about art though, I really wanted to know, since of course, we have like the fact that you said, who am I? What am I? And I feel that that's something that really also touches on art and how we were saying earlier about, being a full human. I wanted to ask you when did you decide to follow the path of the artist?
When I was 7. I totally committed when I was 7 years old. I just kind of like, this is what I want to do. Never a second thought. And the real blessing is I had parents who saw my giftings, and I mean, I've talked to people and they teach art, and I've asked them, how come you never went the direction of being, full-time artist? And they go, well, my parents said, well, you should probably have a backup, take classes in business, take something else, go to the university and that sort of thing. And my dad never once ever said you should have a backup. He goes, you have a gift from God, you have a gifting, and you should pursue it. But I also had teachers who said you have a gift and you should pursue it. So my art teacher used to tell me, and I started studying when I was 10 with the portrait painter teacher, and he used to say, faith in God, confidence in the abilities have given you. And I've always thought, because once you lose your confidence in this business, it's over. And I give the analogy when I teach people, it's like I used to be very much into athletics and sports. If you're at the plate and there's that 90-mile-per-hour fastball coming at you, and if you're overthinking it and you've lost your confidence, but you can't hit this guy, you're going to strike out. So you have to be extremely confident in your giftings and all the tools that you have. Otherwise, this is a highly competitive field, extremely competitive field. And people at the top layer, they're all real good. It's like guitarists for rock bands. There's so many good guitarists, from Jimi Hendrix to Eddie Van Halen and everybody in between. Pat Metheny, they all have their different styles, but they're all really good. And I can tell you across the line, they're all very confident in their abilities, and they're not self-destructive, like going, oh my God, I'm not any good, I'm going to quit. After they'll listen to Eddie Van Halen or Jimi Hendrix, it's like, no, they have a different style, and they believe in their giftings, and you just have to find out kind of where you fit. And I'm going to date myself right here, but I'm old enough to remember there was a guy. What was his name? I can't remember. He played the trombone. He did Moonlight Serenade, trombone leader. Anyway, he was intimidated by Benny Goodman, because he was called the king of swing, and everybody danced to swing. And he realized, that's just not me. So he started doing things that are more like ballads, things like Moonlight Serenade. And I'll remember it afterwards, after we're done. But that meant a lot to me. It's kind of like, there's some people who are just really good at painting animals and horses or people. You have to just kind of find where you're at. So I've always been attracted to painting people and telling stories. So I've kind of I've stuck with that. And so that helped me when I became an illustrator, because a lot of illustration is telling stories. And when you're young, your parents, or me, we read stories to our kids. And so parables or stories. And so those are important. So if your giftings are there, then why fight it? Why try to be something else? And especially if you're starting out, it's really easy just to be overwhelmed and awed by somebody who's really good at their field, especially if they're very successful. It's like, wow, now I have to do that. Well, maybe if that's your leaning, but if it's not your leaning, you're in for a host of heartbreaks, because it's just not your leaning, you know. And also along the way, you need, you know, people to tell you. You need people to speak truth to yourself. And that's another thing about my dad. My dad was probably the biggest influence on me, because, you know, I would do something and he was the type of dad that would say, "Frank, that is so great. It's beautiful." My dad would go, "Well, it needs a little work here and a little work there." So, you know, here's a classic example. Did you ever see American Idol?
Yes.
I watched it early on. They used to have these kids who didn't make it, and they would sing, and they were horrible, right?
Yeah.
And the judges would say, "You're horrible," and the person you know, auditioning would say, "But everybody says I'm great. Everybody says I'm wonderful." They go, "Well, they lied to you," right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very thankful that a lot of my teachers spoke truth to me, were
Mhm.
honest with me. And I mean, sports are very truthful, especially if you're running, let's say, 100-yard dash, 100-meter dash, right? You're in your lane. First person that goes across the line, that guy's the fastest. It's not opinion, it's the fastest. So I already forgot your question. Where we were.
Well, the path of the artist.
Yeah. Well, that's, you
Yeah,
know, in fact, that's part of art. Sometimes when you're painting something and something happens there, you go, "Oh, wow, look at that." Then you kind of go
mhm,
that direction. You know,
exactly.
it's an interesting little thing. And I meander, so hopefully, you know, I won't uh, confuse you.
Nah, you're good. I'm always here for the journey that you're taking us down.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that keeps put on your
yeah.
seatbelt. This is as my son says, you go, it's gonna be kind of like a you know, a clown show here, you know, where the clowns are driving, you know, you know.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to get in the car with my son. It's like, you know, like
Oh, man. Yeah, I really like what you mentioned, though, about, being distracted by things that aren't authentic, right? Like, to you, right? So, like, that really, we were discussing this before we started recording about how, sometimes we get into a specific type of painting or a specific type of technique because we think, oh, this is going to help me paint better. And it might. But then you also have to have that, I guess, that consciousness and that self-awareness to say, kind of like the musician you were mentioning, like, this isn't really me. No
Mhm.
matter how hard I try to push it, it just doesn't feel right. So I'm gonna go this other direction, which is where, my intuition and my inner voice is telling me to go. Which I think that is a very, very important point to make, maybe for listeners who are either having doubts or they're getting distracted by, like social media and like, oh, so and so is doing this, it looks amazing, I should do it too. It's like, should you do that too, though? Is it really something like, is it just because you want to, or is it because it's calling to you, right? There's a big difference between those two things.
Yeah. And sometimes it's
Yeah,
just good to get it out of your system.
yeah, yeah.
Try it.
And mhm.
It's a good thing, you know. If you're just to use a guitar analogy, you know, try the Eddie Van Halen. Go, well, I don't think I'm good at that. So that's easy. Or I'm going to go a little
Mhm.
bit more jazzy, Pat Metheny, you know, and play something that's, you know, more soulful, more sedate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is good to try things out for sure. But then also have that awareness to know if it's working or not, you know? I think that's yeah, I
I mean,
really love that.
a good example, just to keep it the same analogy, is like color palette. Some people use a lot of color. Some people use a restrained color palette.
Mhm,
You know, academically, some people use the Zorn palette, which has,
mhm,
you know, its own limitations, but it's also its own strengths. Um, Then you had Nelson Shanks, who put like every color into his painting. So there's this wide variety and all these different applications. And you just have to find through your temperament, through things that are attracted to you, what works for you. And I think especially when you're younger, that's the time to really try and fail, because you really do learn from your failures. It's like, okay, I'm really not good at that, but I really do like it, and I know I could probably be good at it. See, that's the trick is failing, but failing in a good way, in the sense that you know that you're on a path to getting better at it. It's just kind of like when I learned how to ski. You see so many other people doing it, so you go, okay, I'm going to be falling down a lot, but at some point, I'm not going to fall down as much, and eventually, I'm going to enjoy this, because right now I'm not enjoying this. You know, my head's planted in the snow. It's cold. I'm miserable, but eventually, you learn how to do it, and it's like, hey, this is really fun. And that's kind of the learning curve, especially with art. You know, I'm just not getting this. I'm not separating the lights and the dark. I'm not getting the tones. I'm not understanding the light, the directions. It's a lot to take in to be really good at the craft of making a painting. And whether it's abstract or whether it's realism, you know, and of course every different um, sensibility has its rules. Academicians have their rules, and you know they do have their own messiahs, like Bouguereau. Everybody looks up to Bouguereau, and in fact, I went to a show in San Diego, and it's like, well, wow, look at this body of work is like amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I've been to Sargent shows and just like, I'll never paint like that, you know, especially
Oh.
things are really big.
Yeah.
Well, these are different times, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's nobody really painting the Sistine Chapel anymore. You know, it's a different culture and a different time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because, historically, art has shifted a lot into more and more secular, which is fine. I mean, now we have a much different way of using art, kind of like you mentioned earlier with the book that you recommended. And I find that, there's still a spiritual side to painting that a lot of people. It's fine if there aren't any spiritual people who are painters. That's totally fine. But there is a bit of in my opinion, right? Because this is how I see my own work. I see it as more of a spiritual thing because it's the fundamental act of creation. And that also takes, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of self-knowledge, a lot of self-reflection, reflecting about the world around you. And yeah, it's nice to paint, a certain style and in a more secular way, let's say, in a way of, oh well, this is pretty, so I'm going to paint it. But then there's also like another level, which is I want to paint this because it expresses something about humanity, or it reaches deeper into the why of everything.
Mhm.
Um, which I feel that nowadays, how you said, there's no one painting the Sistine Chapel. Um, yeah, I think there's been a big divide that's occurred. I don't know if it's because of the two world wars and then the Cold War, right? That's happened in the 20th century. That's really divided the art world in that sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, the divide came in actually in the Armory show in New York, and then that's when a lot of the European paintings came in, and people saw you know the the modernists, and that
Hmm.
changed it pretty much changed everything in terms
Yeah.
in terms of art history. But I do to go back a little bit, I do a lot of sacred art,
Hmm.
and even talking about death, one of my paintings, which I always get requests for around Easter, it's called The Empty Tomb. And usually I get requests from all over the world. Literally, can I use your painting for this and this or that? And somebody's put the painting on a coin, and that painting no longer exists. The reason it no longer exists because this family bought the painting and they lived in Santa Rosa, and there was this huge fire in Santa Rosa that just wiped out an entire section of Santa Rosa. And this couple who I know, they literally just escaped with the clothes on their back. As they were leaving their house, their tires exploded
Wow.
and the rims were melting. That's how hot it was. And their whole house burned to the ground. you know, and my painting was in the house. And so talking about things that are temporary, is just imagine just all the pictures of your children, your loved one, your parents, everything's gone.
Yep.
Everything.
Yep.
You know, so I actually lost two paintings. Another friend of mine, his house burned down, and he had one of my paintings. That painting's gone too. It was a painting of Saint Paul, and so yeah, there are markets for everything. You have people who who like sacred art because I've had people have me commission me to do those sort of things. But yeah, and I think Western civilization, and Paul Johnson is author has written about this, and actually Jacques Barza has written about this too. How Western civilization has kind of lost its vigor, it's lost its confidence, it's lost its confidence in its belief system in itself, and its preeminence in terms of knowledge and its access to knowledge. So, but these are things that happen. Jacques Barza would say there's always kind of return to primitivism, where people discover new things, and then the vitalization happens again. It's the yin yang, and it's like the wave, and then it falls and builds again, and it crests and falls, and these are cycles. And you see these cycles in economies. You see these cycles within human beings. We're not just always like that. Things happen. How we react to these things. These are all part of who we are, and that's part of it's part of who we are. How do we react to loss? How do I react to misfortune? How do I react to somebody rejecting my work? In fact, my teacher, again, I had some really good teachers. My teacher gave this great example when I was about 10. He goes, Frank, this is the world you're entering in if this is what you want to do. It could be somebody listening to an opera, an aria, and they'll be so moved. This is like me. It's like you'll start weeping. You just go, wow, well, what is it? Why am I crying? And then there'll be somebody else. They're not phased at all. And not only not phased at all, they have a negative reaction to that. So I turn it off. I don't know. Why are you bothering me with this noise, this woman screeching? That's the art world, and that's life. That's part of of what we've kind of signed up for, right? I'll have somebody come into my shop and just walk in, walk out. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome. And I'll have somebody come in and just like, wow, look at you did these, yeah, everything in here, yeah, wow. And just we'll stand there and we'll talk for a while. And, hey, have a seat, because I have, so you can tell I have chairs in here for people to sit down, and we'll have a conversation. And they go, do you mind? Am I distracted? He goes, no. I said, if I wanted to be distracted, if I didn't want to be distracted, I wouldn't be here on the street, because it makes you just kind of walk in here. So yeah, there's a market for everything. Yeah. Frankly. Yes. That's what I've learned. Yeah. I remember one time talking to a gallery owner in Carmel, California, and he's looking for angst. I want angst in my painting. I'm like, well, I don't quite do angst. I mean, I've got a couple of things might be close to it, but he's looking for angst. And he showed me this one painting, and it was like these women hanging, literally, almost like they're being tortured, hanging like from meat cleavers. I'm looking at this, just going, holy shit! Who does stuff like that? Well, he goes, I just sold that to this famous person on TV. And I'm not going to say who it was, but they're a talk show host. And I was like, no way. He goes, yeah, I sold two of them to them. And I'm just going, man, that's pretty dark. But it goes to show you, it's kind of like, you've seen that there's that famous painting of Clinton in the blue dress, flipping off. And that person, I guarantee, is making a lot of money doing stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So there's art is just an expression of who we are. So, as Carl Jung would say, there's the shadow, right? You get the darkness, And in Christianity, we would say, that's sin. It's the fallen part of man. And so you're able to, that same person who can do great things can also do very wicked things. You have the capacity. That's not even up for debate. Human nature, human existence has showed us that. That same person who can be very generous could also be extremely stingy. And that same person who can show so much love to, let's say, his children, would have no problem wiping somebody else who he's not related to.
Yep.
We're complicated creatures.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a little bit of everything. I mean, it's such a grand spectrum, and I like that you tied it into the art market, being so vast, and so open in that sense that, you can paint almost anything. And I'm sure there's someone out there who will really love whatever it is that, someone decides to
I've been
paint.
doing this since I was 10. I've seen it.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised what people will buy. I'm serious. So,
Yeah.
so when people are struggling, it's like, you'll find the market. You just have to find that market.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, what do you recommend if someone is painting something and they really haven't found their market quite yet?
Well, I think it's a lot easier now, especially with the internet, to
Mhm.
find market, to find your tribe. That's another way, a mental construct. You have to find your tribe.
Mhm.
Like when I graduated art center, that was around the time that punk was in full swing, and there were artists who I remember this artist. I really liked his work, really edgy. His name was Gary Panter, and he just did all this. And there's another artist who's got like a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called "Beauty is Embarrassing." Have you seen that documentary?
No.
By William Wright. Got to check that out. And I think it's on Netflix. And when you do find your tribe, like I was talking about this guy Gary Panter and William Wright and that documentary called Life is Embarrassing. He eventually, just because of the sort of work he was doing, he started doing work for Pee-wee's Playhouse. And this might be before your time, but
Oh,
that
I
was a
love
very
Pee-wee's Playhouse.
well, this guy was one of the guys who created some of the creatures for Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so you eventually find your tribe and you find your market. Like I had
Mhm.
this one intern for a while, and eventually she got into doing tattoos, and just extremely successful tattoo artist now,
Mhm.
making a hell of a lot more money than I am. These guys are making $100,000, $200,000
Mhm.
tattoos.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Now, that's not my gifting, but she found her tribe and she found what she
Mhm.
really liked. And she found that, I don't like having to make something look real and depth and perspective. And you know what I'm saying? And so why stress it if that's not your leaning? So
Right.
it was tattoo work and, it's two-dimensional and I loved it. And she's happy and she's
Yeah.
doing great. You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And so
Yes.
usually there's always a level of stress. You're gonna have stress in everything you do, but you shouldn't be stressing something that you hate to do,
Yep.
unless. But of course, like my dad had to do something he really didn't like to do just because of
Mhm.
his economic conditions, and so what he did was he used to drive me to my art teacher selflessly every Saturday. He wanted to give me the advantage he never had.
Mhm.
And I always be thankful to my dad for that because it was a selfless act. It was a Christ-like act. And he even told me later on, I didn't feel like doing that all the time, but I wanted you to have something I didn't have.
Mhm.
And so I didn't have much of a, let's say, the Norman Rockwell growing up around East LA didn't have the Norman Rockwell lifestyle. But when I got older, I wanted to give that to my children. So,
Right.
I built them a fort. We had an acre of property, swings, and I would literally stop work at 3 o'clock, go out and play with them. Some of our
Oh.
biggest joys is, we had this huge country road and a big field over it. And with my kids, we had 9 iron, hitting golf balls across the street, playing croquet on our lawn, playing basketball with them. I never had that with my dad, but I wanted to give
Mhm.
that to my children. And so now that they're older and go, Dad, that was really cool that you did that. They go, oh, I wanted you to have that because I never had that. My dad did what he did, which was drive me to class. But he wasn't one of those dads who showed up, for watch me play baseball or anything like that. He was working,
Yeah.
And by the time he came home, he was really tired. He was a machinist. So yeah, eventually you will, circling back, you will find your tribe, and that's when you'll be the most content. The worst is when you're kind of forcing yourself to do something you really don't like. On the other hand, sometimes you'll have to do something in a season. There's always these seasons that you may not like, but you have to make a living. And especially if you're married and have children, you got to provide, And so I tend to take my responsibilities as a husband and as a father. I always hated that whole Gauguin story where he abandoned his wife and his children to go paint, and I go, well, I'm not buying into that, And some people do. I'm all into my art, but I my temperament is like, God, that sucks for the wife. That really sucks for the kids.
Yep.
I mean, I can't get away. I can't get away from that.
Yeah.
And it taints how I look at the man. You know what I'm saying? Plus, how he's so verbally abusive to Van Gogh. Just a bully.
Yeah.
But he was a good. But I've known these people. But he was a good painter. You can't take that away from him. He was good at what he did. I think.
Yeah. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal, considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. Yeah, I mean that's part of it. Like how you were saying, there's something for everyone, and I really like that. You'll find your own tribe one day. Perspective,
You will.
because
Yeah.
yeah, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who might be listening who maybe they feel like they're trying to find where they belong, basically. And it takes time. It takes time, but it also takes, like you were saying, putting yourself out there, using the internet, meeting people in person, which you were just mentioning how you really love having your studio uh, as a almost like a gallery, so anyone can just walk in and you can have a conversation. And that always, I really love what you mentioned when you said that too, because how you mentioned connection, right? Human connection, talking to others, it really does expand your world, because there are a lot of people who, yes, they look inward too much and they get, like you said, too focused on their own problems or on their own things, when in reality, I mean, if they spoke to others, they'd be a little bit more aware of all the things that are going right, not so much all the things that are going wrong. Which, yeah. And actually, I did want to ask you, because you have quite an extensive amount of experience. You worked on E.T., you also worked on Indiana Jones and Star Wars. What was that like
Return of
for
the
you?
Jedi.
Because yes. What was that like for you? Because you started out as a fine artist, then illustrator, then back to fine artist. What was it like for you to work in George Lucas Industrial Light and Magic, and how did that affect your subsequent return into fine art?
Well, it's a funny story because I always wanted to work on Star Wars, and they actually called me, which was great because one of the guys in the math department, and that's the
Mhm.
background, and
Yes.
called Art Center, and that's where George Lucas originally wanted to go. He wanted to go to Art Center, but when he got an award for a short movie that he made, he got a scholarship to USC. I also
Okay.
went to USC, so he called Art Center because at that time it was considered, the best art school in Southern California. And so when they talked to the dean recommended two people, and I was one of the people he recommended. And I got the job. And so at that time, I didn't have I was talented, but I had no work ethic. And so I would make a lot of money and just go to the beach, fool around with girls, go broke, and then try to get work again. I mean, just no, no. Well, I had a work ethic, but it's just kind of like, yeah, Southern California, it's taking it easy. So they called me around the time I was kind of going broke. I'd done a calendar for Coors Beer, and God, that sustained me for a year because they paid me really well, and the illustration pays really well. And so what I learned working for George Lucas was painting every day, full 8 hours. You get to be really good at once you're painting every day, and you're painting these landscapes. And I also learned how to accept criticism and to respect the criticism from two other artists who were definitely better than I was. And I was more art centery, concept, and I could do realism, but I could do all these other things. These guys were all kind of doing photoreal backgrounds, so I had to work really hard to get up to speed. And so it was a difficult learning, but my temperament is like, I'm going to do this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, okay, there's this little wording that I use for people. You want to eliminate the fun. You want to eliminate fear. You cannot be fearful. You know, fear. You just being totally intimidated and fearful. I'll tell you, it's the most incapacitating thing for an artist.
Mhm.
You is unbelief. You got to really believe that you can do it. If you can't believe that you can do it, you're not going to do it. You know, and then B is bitterness. The worst thing for artists is to be bitter. Bitter because these guys are piling up on me. Bitter that I'm not making enough money. Bitter they don't recognize me. Those are the killers. Those are the energy killers. Those are the life killers. Fear, unbelief, bitterness. They're destructive. So these guys would really work me over because I definitely wasn't at the level they were, but they saw that I had talent. And back then, if there was internet, I probably definitely wouldn't have got hired because I was all over the place. If you saw my portfolio, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what I learned is when people get to that level, everybody there is at the top of their game. It's really unbelievable to see so many people who are so good at what
Yeah.
they do. I mean, you just take it for granted. They're really good at what they do, you know? And so you just really have to up your game. It's very intimidating if you don't have confidence in your abilities. Because,
Mhm.
I mean, especially, I met all the actors. I met Michael Jackson. The funniest thing Michael Jackson said to us, he goes, if I can paint like you guys, I give up singing. And I forgot. I said something like, I don't think you'd like the income drop, you know? And so we would meet all these actors. And after a while, it just kind of got boring seeing all the actors and that sort of thing. And then going out on location and working with the director and cameraman. It was a wonderful experience because I've always loved film.
Mhm.
I weaned on film, even took a film class at USC. So one of my dreams was working for Star Wars, especially when a friend of mine took me kicking and screaming to see the original Star Wars. Like, I don't want to see that. He goes, Ray, you got to see this one. Nah, I don't think so. Saw it and it was like, whoa, look at this thing. So I really want, and still, there's a big fan base out there of people. That's all they know me from is working on Jedi, working on the shots and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, but it did teach me how to be confident, teach me how to accept criticism, because usually after we all would film our shots, and we'd have our own what's called dailies, and we'd sit down literally almost for an hour, just pick paintings apart or pick our shot apart. Why did you do that? Maybe you should move that there. And it's just sometimes for 2 hours. I'm not so sure. And we're talking really picking at things because we wanted it to be excellent. And eventually that becomes your culture, is you do not substitute what's expedient for excellence. Yeah. And so they had their own little vocabulary there. CBB, could be better, you know. And that's another word of saying keep working on it, you know, CBB. And so it was a wonderful experience, but I never saw myself, you know, as an employee for life. I always wanted to be the boss man. I wanted to be the George Lucas, and that's kind of the way I was trained. I was, you know, one of my mentors, Sam Hyde Harris, good friends with Norman Rockwell. I mean, he mentored me. I used to take care of his studio. His neighbor was Frank Tenney Johnson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. No, Western painter, very big in the Western market. He's like a god. He's like one of the Bouguereaus, you know, to that Western market. Did all these nocturnes. If you see these nocturnes from Western painters, they're kind of imitating Frank Tenney Johnson. You know, he did nocturnes. He's famous for that. And so I always was around these people who were just very confident, and so. And of course, sometimes confidence goes into arrogance, and I was guilty of that when I was there. You just think you're just top of the world, which we were, because at that time there was no competition for Industrial Light and Magic. That was the name of the company. So, but it was a wonderful experience. It didn't even. It felt like we were just playing, just coming up with ideas and just having free reign to. And back then, it's different than today. Today's all digital. Back then, I was in charge of the shot. I was like the director of the shot, working with my camera. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to stage it. It's not like that anymore. It's all, everybody's some guys do a little digital cloud, another person do a little digital tree, another person do a digital building, another person do digital people. There's, you know, everybody's got a little specialty. Whereas back then, we did the entire painting. So you just learned how to do the whole thing. So there's a little bit of that cinematic. I still have a love of doing landscapes, you know, and frankly, landscapes are the easiest to sell because it's like, oh, that eye doesn't look good or that mouth doesn't look good. You know, if you don't have the tree, you know, you've got like a landscape behind you. I mean, who knows if the branch was that tall or lower, or if it was skinnier or thicker? Nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? It's not. There's a lot of leeway. And so, and people always love, they love where they've been. You know, if they've been to Yosemite, if they've been to San Miguel, you know, the beautiful landscape there, or they've been to the Pacific Ocean or Cabo, they want a painting of that to remember. And I have no problem with that because I've gone way past. You know, there's within the artistic community. You know, I see, I'm just thankful to be able to make art. You know, I could be doing something else. So when I have, when I have a lady come in here and she tells me, you know, my dog died, and I really loved my dog, and I look at your paintings. Can you do a painting of my dog? And I go, absolutely. I'll do a painting of your dog. And some gal came in the other day. He said, I don't know if you do this, but I love my husband, and his grandparents were born on the res. And I know he likes this photograph, but it's all scratched up. Can you paint that? Because I know you're really good with portraits, and I like how you paint them. Can you? I go, absolutely. So I do a lot of that because it's like I'm part of the community. You know, and I wouldn't. It would really hurt me to go, no, that's not art. I don't copy somebody else's photo. You know, I'm human to human. they love somebody, and they want something that says, I value you, and I hired this artist because I value you, and I want this for you because I love you. And so being part of that chain, I think that's amazing, you know. And so I'm kind of done with the highfalutin part of art, and you just got to do that, which is uh, for grandeur. It's that kind of Ruskin school of thought, paint for greatness and that sort of thing. And there's part of me like, yeah, I want to do something really, really great. But sometimes it's just the little things that are really important. I just did a painting of my daughter with my granddaughter. I'm sorry, my daughter-in-law with my granddaughter, and this was a very intimate little thing with her with the baby, and gave it to them, and they love it. And then when little Emily grows up, it's going, that was me with my mommy. See, you're part of their story. You're part of their narrative. You've entered into that, And I have a painting, back there. It's called My Brother's Keeper. I have one son where everything went great for him. The kid's a great runner. The girls loved him. Just like a golden child. Then I have another boy where he almost died when he was born. He survived spinal meningitis, and he's had just a lot of challenges with back surgeries, cerebral palsy, just a lot of challenges. We've had the grand mal seizure right in front of me. Wait till you see your kid with their eyes, rolled back and only see white. I mean, that'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
So I did a painting called, Brother's Keeper, because when I die, I want this son right there to know he's got to help this son right there, and so that painting is for them. It's like it's a testament. It's a challenge. It's a vision for them to know, you guys grew up together, and even though you've got your own family, I want you to also think of your brother, because when we're gone, we're not going to be able to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gets real. Life gets really real. Well, John Lennon said, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans.
Yep. That's
I mean,
very, very true.
I've got all these things right now. I'm doing a big commission for a college down, and painting a portrait of a donor for a college. My building's up for sale, and I've been here 13 years, and so I'm gonna have to deal with that if somebody buys this building,
Right.
and if not, I'm gonna have to be willing, if they raise my rent, I'm gonna have to. I mean, I'll do that for several months until I finish my projects, but this is life. These are these changes. How are you going to deal with the change? See, that exposes your temperament. It exposes, as an artist, well, why has this happened to me? Well, it's happened to a lot of people, so.
Yeah.
Again, that's part of the bitterness thing. You don't want to get bitter about it.
Yes.
It's like, why me? That sort of thing. So the
Yeah.
art, again, is to help enrich somebody's life, because life is difficult, and life, I believe, is worth living.
It is.
I think of life. I know some people think of death, but I think of life. I want more life, especially now as I'm getting older. There's definitely mortality, but I think of more life. I want to eat the right foods. I just got for the first time a hearing aid. This is what happens. You start losing your hearing. And so now, but I'm thankful that I live in this age, because now, my hearing aid, I can control it now with my phone.
Yes.
And because I have tinnitus, like right now while I'm talking to you, my ear's ringing, it's like that.
Oh, wow.
It's constant. And so I have to deal with that. And so it has these anti-masking, so it's not as bad. So these are great innovations through through technology, that I'm thankful I live in this time. I'm very thankful. Living a life where you're of gratitude and thankfulness is a really good thing, because there's a lot of I don't know how people present themselves all on Facebook or Netflix, but there is a lot of suffering in the world. And so I look at my artists, how can I help uplift the human, be an uplifting part of that? That's a very
Yeah.
clumsy way. I know it's very clumsy and doesn't sound too philosophical, but I want to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Like, yeah, go ahead and jump. That was that Van Halen song. He actually
Yes.
was. It was like for Stu, it's like, yeah, go ahead, jump. I'm not
Mhm.
that. And then of course you do that. And let's rock and roll. But maybe you should I mean, I had a friend who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and killed himself. You know, and so I would never tell him, yeah, go ahead and jump. You don't when somebody's that
Mhm.
fragile, you don't do that.
Yeah.
So. I mean, there's a lot of heartache. I just had a friend, they just lost their child to fentanyl, their 24-year-old child.
Wow.
And it's heartbreaking to be around people who've lost a child like that. It's
Mhm.
devastating.
Yeah.
I did a painting one time of it had Jesus holding this young man. He's kind of in this, and it was actually an illustration for an article about teenage suicide and loss. And sometimes when somebody's in that condition, the most you can do is just either hold them or touch them. You can't be talking to them and talking about what you're going through. They're not hearing what you're going through. But
Mhm.
they want just that energy of you holding them. And there was a guy who bought that painting, and it was a small little painting. This was, I don't know, 15 years ago. It was a little 5x7 painting, and I didn't want to sell it. So I put like $2,800 on it. And the guy bought the painting. Actually, the wife bought the painting for the husband because he was in a ministry to abuse children or who were marginal. And he came home and he was like crying. And she goes, "What's going on?" He goes, "I saw this painting and I started weeping." So she went to the gallery and she bought the painting for him for Christmas. So
Wow.
you're part, and I didn't know that.
Mm.
I one time did a painting of a rock, and it was sold in a show, and the son contacted me, and he said, "My dad saw this painting of this rock that you did, and he just started crying." And the reason why is he just told us that he now has terminal cancer and he's going to die. But this was the rock that we played on. I mean, I didn't know this. But this was the rock that we played on when we were kids. And the father bought it to give to the son to remember the good times.
Yeah.
Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing?
That's amazing. Yeah. I remember one time I asked a guest if they ever feel that they're accidentally painting something for a specific person without knowing. And it does seem to feel that way, especially when you mention like events like this, where, you know, the specific rock, like that's insane. You just thought, oh, this is a cool rock. I want to paint it. But to someone else, it has a much deeper meaning.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. And that's
I don't,
beautiful.
yeah,
That's the beautiful part of being an artist as well.
yeah,
Like we said earlier, that human connection and the almost the union sort of everything is connected and like everything that's going to be said will be said and it's going to be said again. There's nothing new under the sun type of situation. Um, and I find that beautiful that you were able to touch lives in that way, and then they touched your life back because you didn't know about the painting that this wife bought, but when you find out after, it's like, oh wow,
yeah,
this is meaningful. This is like it makes you want to keep painting as well.
absolutely. And when you and
Yeah.
when you get Laura, when you get those storylines from people, it really gives you a shot of energy and grace. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is why I'm doing this. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And because you're able to see uh, how it's involved with that family. I did a painting. It's called A One Arm and a Bridge. I went down to do a painting. We have a Mount Quarries Bridge. We all here on the American River, which is down by our canyon, and it it's a famous tourist bridge made out of concrete, and it's called Mount Quarries Bridge. So I want to go down there and do a plein air,
Mhm.
but it was already too late, around 3 o'clock, and there were these three men. Found out they're three brothers. One was drinking beer, getting hammered. Another one was playing a guitar, and the other one was fishing. So I asked the guy I was fishing, I go, you guys mind? I was going to take this shot here. Can I take a picture? And he goes, yeah. And then I found out the guy that fishing only had one arm. He only had one arm, and
Wow.
he was smoking. So I still I don't know how he was smoking with just one arm. So I did the painting, and the bridge is called No Hands Bridge because I think naming paintings are really important. So it's called
Mhm.
One Hand in a Bridge, and that painting just I've had paintings that bring people together. But eventually, the parents contacted me. He goes, "How did you get him to pose for that? He was traumatized. He was working on a walnut farm, and somehow his he's putting some brush into this, the brush grinder, and it just ripped
Mhm.
out his arm. It ripped out his arm, and somebody, put a tourniquet on it, saved his life. Otherwise, he would have bled out. So I mean, his arm goes down to there. He goes, he's been really shy about it, and he's been in counseling, and so we're just amazed that he allowed you to paint him. And eventually, I met him. I made a print for them, and because they were not people of any means, you know what I'm saying. Even
Yeah.
paying $100 for it would have been too much, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But and then he came back a year later, and he's got this high tech bionic arm. And he could uh, program it, and he had his gorgeous girlfriend. I go, all right, man, and he's moving on.
Yeah.
Saying, I did a painting of this one guy. I was at a Christian concert down in Sonoma County, and there was this guy, this hippie guy, and he looked lost. He was definitely out of place. And he
Mhm.
was just kind of walking around looking at everybody. And it's a painting on a website called The Traveler. And I did this painting because I was struck by who this guy was. And I posted it on Facebook, and I get a message on Facebook. Who is this? How do you know this guy? This is a friend of mine. That was really cool. And eventually I contacted this guy, and we started talking, and he'd just become a Christian. So he was at this concert. He was just blown away, just looking around, and he ended up on the West Coast because he was mad at his mother because his mother had divorced his father, and he was angry about the situation. So he hadn't seen or talked to his mother in years, and this painting brought them together.
Oh,
She even contacted me. He said, "Can I contact him?" And I go, "Yeah, sure." And I haven't followed up, but that's just the painting, and
mhm.
that painting just was a vehicle to at least have a communication,
Yeah.
between the two. And I've had a lot of those. I've just had a lot of those things happen to me in my work. So it's more than just selling painting. It's almost a ministry,
Yep.
you know. Somebody came in here the other day, goes, "You're like a pastor of art. You're like an art pastor, because it's more than just making a buck. It's being involved in people's lives. It's helping to encourage them. Life is worth living.
Mhm.
Life is beautiful. There is beauty in life. Yes, there is ugliness, and you can find some beauty in ugliness, but uh, I celebrate God's creation. I celebrate that I'd rather look in the goodness in you than to pick on your faults. Because you get around anybody long enough, you just go, I don't know if I can handle that. You know what I'm saying? It's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Come on, let's be honest here. That's life. After
Yeah.
after you spend time with people, it's like, yeah, it really bugs me. The guy farts too much, or he smells, or he says you know too much. I had me and a buddy of mine, had a radio show here in Auburn. K high, no high like a K high. And so we talked about cultural things. And after I listened to myself for the first time, I realized I said 28 you knows. Drove me crazy. So part of my challenge was to eliminate the you knows. I got it down to maybe one or two for the half hour. And
Mhm.
then, kind of as you said in the preamp, the ums.
Yes.
Now I eliminate when I'm thinking of the ums, I just stop.
Yeah, exactly.
I gather my thought, and then I talk. So now when I
Yeah.
hear somebody do too many you knows or bugs the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Because no, I don't know. I don't know. That's why we're communicating, so you could explain to me, because I might not
Mhm.
know what you're thinking. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot in listening back to yourself. It's like, did I really say it like that? Or you make a lot of mistakes. So life is worth living and focusing on the positive. Whatever's
Yes.
good, whatever's virtuous, whatever is a good report. These are the things otherwise you're gonna go cynical. You're
And
always,
bitter.
because that's what the news is for. News is always the bad news, who killed who said what, who burned down this, yada 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 yada. But there's
Yeah.
also, I always thought it'd be a good network to GNBN, the good news, bad news
Yes.
network. Gives you a
Yes.
little bit of both, because in life there's both of these things are happening.
Exactly. Yeah, and that ties back into what we were saying about the art market. It's like how first of all, it's like how do you want to participate in the art market? Like how you want to uplift, right? And then how how else do you want to connect with others through your art, whether it is painting or becoming a tattoo artist or any of those different forms of expression. And I think
Mhm.
that's it's great to have that perspective.
Yeah.
And
You're a good
now I'm
interviewer.
noticing that I'm humming. Oh, thank you.
You're good. I've been interviewed by a lot of people, and you're really good.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you so much.
No, I'm just saying that because you not only ask questions, but you have your own thoughts, and it makes me think of things just like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah,
So it's a dialogue. It's not just okay
exactly.
asking me these questions.
Exactly.
It's a dialogue. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that you appreciate it because I really love making the conversation feel like it's just you and me grabbing a coffee and just hanging out and talking about the things that are important to us and how others might benefit from your knowledge specifically because you've had quite a long career. You mentioned earlier that you started living from your work at the age of 21. And I'm very curious about that because how was it like for you to make that jump to, you're 21 and now you're an artist living from your work? What was that like?
Well, there's nothing more dangerous than moving around people that you're accountable to, like in Southern California and Pasadena, and moving up to Northern California where nobody knows you.
Mm.
So I was not very good with my money at first. I forgot who was the singer. The song goes something like, she's so fine, ain't no telling where the money went." And I remember just spending so much money on the weekends with a girlfriend, and she go, "Did I spend over $1,000? What? This was back in 80, 83, 84. Like, what?" And it's just, I was literally out of control. That's one reason why how I became a Christian. And I'll tell you a story I've never told before, and my kids know about this. But at that time, I didn't do a lot of drugs, so somebody turned me on to acid. So it's like, okay, uh, I was out of work. We were gone for the day. We had a day off, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna do a dose. And I lived in this town called San Geronimo. And we had all these fire trails back there, and so I was gonna dose and just go with nature. And I was really new agey back then. Like, wow, look at this, isn't this great? And then we get a call, and it's like, you got to come in right now. Why? She says, Leonard Nimoy's here. We're gonna do the Star Trek, and you got to come in. I go, no. They go, yeah, you got to come in. So I have no idea how I made it there, but when they were showing us, he was showing us the animatics, the spacecraft, battle scenes, this or that. I was literally right behind Leonard Nimoy, and I'm just going, "Wow, look at that!
So
That's
cool.
amazing!" And he's turning around, going, "You like it?" I go, "I love it." I was out of my mind. Everybody's going, "What's with Frank?" I
Yeah.
mean, it was like more real than real. I say
Mhm.
that story because unless I got saved, I don't need to proselytize. but definitely would have been dead. I would have destroyed myself because I had no boundaries. I was an absolute narcissist. Uh, I was a truly horrible person. I just lived for my art, lived for me. You know, what do you want from life, from the tubes? I wanted to work on Star Wars, make money, driving around my Porsche, just thinking I'm just the hottest thing, and bought my own house, single. You're on top of the world. Everybody tells you you're on top of the world, but I was, very hollow and shallow inside. So,
Yeah.
when you hear Christians say they got saved, I definitely got saved, right? Because I was on the path of destruction. In fact, right now I'm doing a painting of Hank Williams, and when I went in this church, I heard this song. I saw the light, and I just start uncontrollably crying. I'm going, why am I crying to this song? And then years later, I found out it was written by Hank Williams, and I love Hank Williams. And one of the reasons I love Hank Williams is because I love Bob Dylan. I read his book Chronicles, and his two biggest influences were uh, help me, uh, Woody Guthrie, and Hank Williams. So I go, hey, if Dylan loves Guthrie and Dylan's, I got to explore these people, and I did, and I really got into Hank Williams, and he's amazing. His songs are like poetry, and so it really resonated with me. And that's art. It's painting with music, And I remember one time one guy was looking at one of my paintings and just started crying. Well, why are you crying? It's not a song. It's just really moving me. And you just don't know how people are going to respond to things. And I have one collector who I don't know, owns like probably 12 of my paintings. And he bought his first painting he bought me was a painting when Johnny played with the dark side, which is my little boy who got into an outfit of Darth Vader. And I always thought that was odd because I grew up with Roy Rogers and trying to be, the good guy. And here's my son dressing up like the bad guy. So the painting's called When Johnny Played with the Dark Side. And he bought that painting, and his life turned around in the Grand Canyon. And he said, going nowhere. And he took a boat trip down on the river in Colorado. He said it just changed his life. He realized what he wanted to do, and now he's very well to do. And so now he's bought 3 of my Grand Canyon paintings only because it means something to him. Yeah. When it sees that, he goes, yeah, that going to the Grand Canyon, that changed my life. And the title of one of my paintings is The Edge of Forever. And he goes, man, I don't know why you called it that, but I get that. I was there. It's like you're at the edge of forever, the forever possibilities, and then he makes it his own. I think naming paintings is really, I got a painting called When a Seed Pierced an Emerald Stone, and it's on Emerald Bay. And I designed it kind of like the crucifix. If you look at it, you'll see, cross of Christ. And of course, it's not the cross of Christ. It's a tree, mm-hmm. But the tree is growing out of a rock. And it's like, why are these trees growing out of rocks? Well, these little groove between the rocks, and somehow that seed kind of went down there, gained root, and you got this tree. It's the most amazing thing, right? So to me, it's a metaphor there. Yeah. A seed pierced, this Emerald Bay rock, and somebody bought it. I was in a show. I don't know who bought it, but these are things that really help people. It's part of their journey. Yeah. So if that's where I'm coming from, that's why that's what keeps me going. It's more than just I'm just gonna. And of course, I'm in the Western market. Probably a lot of it has to do with my ancestry. I'm 55%, Mexican, American Indian, Chichimeca probably. From my ancestry says that's where I'm at. So we're the Indians running away from the Aztecs. Looking over our shoulders. Obviously, my strain survived, and so my family's from New Mexico. My mom's, and so I grew up with Navajos. My grandfather spoke Navajo. My grandmother made dresses for Navajo. Love the turquoise. A lot of my buddies now are merchants. Some of my closest friends, we go to Santa Fe every year together, rent a house, and they sell, first, second, and third phase Navajo blankets and weaves and jewelry. So that's kind of my tribe now. And these are people who love, Western art. And that's, to me, it's a season right now, and I'm really into it. And I love the culture, reading about it, and it reminds me of every year going to the ranch of my grandfather. My uncles were cowboys. I mean, literally cowboys, horses with cows and the whole 9 yards. So I would say a lot of my paintings is just a documentary of my life experiences. So you don't want to be, well, this is not my opinion, but you don't want to be that artist who's just finding pictures on the internet, and that's a cool picture, and I'm going to paint that. That's kind of soulless after a while, because you're borrowing somebody else's inspiration. I mean, everything I paint was usually something that I've had an idea. Here's a classic example. My little boy, David, one day he said, "I'm in Happy World. I'm in Happy World." And I always thought, God, there's something there. And I kept that, in my mind. And then one day this little girl, her dad came in, and she had this blow up, she had a balloon hat. I go, "Oh, can you pose for me? You mind if your daughter poses for me?" Because I've been here, they all know me, so I'm not a pedo or anything. He goes, "Yeah, okay." So, I photographed it, and I thought about this, and there's a painting, and that painting morphed, and you'll find on my website, that painting morphed into the Duchess of Happy World. She's got the collar on, and her little scepter is, candy, and it's like Emerald City behind her. It's all made out of balloons, and it's just something I wanted to paint. And and the reason I call it the Duchess of Happy World, and I'm thinking of a book, but I'm too lazy to write a book, because to be a king and queen is responsibility. If you're a Dutch or a Duchess, you have less responsibility. It's perfect for being the forever king. And the person who bought that was this doctor who was, what do you call a doctor who's doctor for kids, for children?
Pediatrician?
Yeah.
Nice.
And she saw that. She goes, I have to have that painting. She goes, because I worked at a children's hospital, and I love that. So it's like you're and she's able to meet the girl. She wanted to meet the little girl and all that. So it's like a family affair. So I'm a little unusual here that I do have my studio/gallery. So I do meet a lot of my collectors. So I don't know how that is with other artists, because they're selling through a gallery, and some galleries are very provincial about, no, I'm not going to let you know who the buyer is, because maybe you're going to call them up, and I'm going to lose that. So it depends. Some will tell you, some won't.
Yeah.
So, but I pretty much know most of my collectors, and so usually when I'm done with something, this might be a tip. I do what a gallery does. This is one of my newest paintings. I sell that way. There's a gal who wants to buy a painting now. She goes, "Frank, but I got this new house. I don't need the autumn colors anymore. You got something that doesn't have autumn colors." And there's that. And I've sent her like 3 things. She goes, "No, it's too much autumn colors," but she wants another painting.
Yeah.
But just at some point, she'll dive in. But and I'm cool with that. I kind of done being a purist. I've read, especially the Atelier guys. I have to make my own oils. I have to stretch my own canvas. Yeah, I did that for a while. It just takes up way too much time. There's people really good at making canvases and really good at making paint. And so, I'm sponsored by Blick, and so they just put 2 of my paintings on their new, check it out. They put one of my paintings on their artist license. So this is into the twilight painting. So that's kind of a cool thing, huh?
Yeah, that's great. And that's part of how we were saying your career. It's been prolific and long, and you've remained very open and receptive to the things that bring you joy, that end up bringing others joy. So you really are uplifting everyone around you. which actually makes me wonder, do you have any upcoming shows or do you have any upcoming events, workshops that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow for Broadmoor Experience. So Broadmoor Galleries, which is in Colorado Springs. So I'm going to be there. My good buddy Thomas Blackshear's there, so I'll be hanging out with him. And then let's see here. I was telling you, I was on the board of the California Art Club, so we're having our gold medal show. So I'll be in the gold medal show. I think that's the Hilbert Museum in Orange. I'm not sure. I should know that, and I'm embarrassed I don't know that. So don't. But I know it's in Southern California.
Yes.
So I'm in that, and then I'm in a show. There's a newscaster by the name of Glenn Beck, and he's invited 30 artists to be involved in this first ever show. It's called American Narratives in Fine Art. And so I'm one of the 30 artists that got invited. You know, you've got, again, my buddy Thomas Blackshear's in it, Tom Browning's in it, my other buddy Michael Dudash is in it. Let's see, Morgan Weisling's wife is in it. These are I should know more names, but there's Thomas Fluharty, who's an amazing cartoonist and draftsman, in it. It's gonna be a good show. I think you could. The website is up, so I picked the theme. We're all supposed to pick a theme, and I picked country music. So I did a painting just because I love Johnny Cash. I love Gene Autry. I'm right now finishing up on my Hank Williams. So that show is going to be in September. And so Jason Rich is also a lot of the guys from the Pre to West are in the show. And so I'm going to be doing that. And then here I get involved locally. We have a studio tour in November. So I open up my studio and we get people from local coming into the gallery at studio tour. I'm also involved with called Art Walk, so people can come in here, and that's in August. Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, and I bring my wife along. And we're doing another show in Santa Fe, and I bring my wife along, making a family event, and it's all good. And you know, meet with friends and grow old and tell stories together. You know, it's the way it should be. You know.
Yeah, being more part of a community and and taking joy in coexisting with the people around you. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
By the way, where can people find more of your work?
Well, I've been with Fine Art Studio Online for quite some time now. So you just go to ordasart.com. You know, I also have a book. Go if you want to see some of my landscapes. I have the land iconic. So I do love landscapes. You know, I love still life, but I'm not passionate about it, so I don't do it. And there's so many people who are really good at it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of stick to what I really love, you know, painting people and landscapes and people in landscapes, that sort of thing. And yeah. And you can also find me on Instagram. You won't find me on Facebook because a horrible thing happened, and I wish I was famous because there'd be a remedy. Somebody inserted something and hacked my Facebook, and Facebook literally has just eliminated me. And I've appealed it, and they said our decision is final. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. And they said for security reasons we can't tell you what happened. It's crazy. Now, if I was really, really famous, you know,
they would have fixed it.
Some recourse, but but just yeah, they really wiped me out there because you know during the COVID thing, I'm right here on the street, so I get some business people coming in. This place was like a ghost town, you know, like Zombieville. There were literally leaves in the middle of the street, and it's like so. I had all these plein airs, and I decided I got inspired by that movie Life. Beauty is Embarrassing by William Wright. This guy went into these Goodwill stores, bought prints, and then started writing things on top of these old prints.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gave me an idea. So, well, why don't I kind of do that with my own paintings? So I started, being that I worked on Star Wars, I started putting Star Wars characters into my plein air paintings. And it just took off. It was crazy. I did this auction thing on Messenger, and I've sold all over the world. And just it was ridiculous. Just these paintings are hanging around. As soon as I put a Star Wars character in them, sold.
Nice.
And that really kept me going during that whole COVID thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, but I'm doing okay. So I don't need that as much. But that really helped during that COVID. So I'm no longer on Facebook, and I probably will get back on again. And I have no reason why they took me out, and they won't explain why I'm out. But I am on
Yeah.
Instagram. But
Yes.
that's weird, because I used to be on Instagram and I hadn't posted in years, so I was getting upwards of 200, likes of it, and now I'm like, I don't know what's with the algorithm, but it's like I'm barely 20, 30. It's like starting all over again.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
It
It's
is.
like you kind of lose momentum. It's like starting all over again. But that's life in the big city.
Yes, it is.
No use getting bitter about it. So
Nope.
you just gotta
Just,
work with it.
yeah,
You know
roll
what
with
I'm
the
saying?
punches. Yeah.
I'm not the only one that's lost, an account. So
Yep. But yeah, well, thank you so much, Frank, for
thank you, Laura.
your incredible regaling of all these stories. They're going to be bouncing around my head probably for the rest of my life because they're so interesting. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.